Okay, everyone, good afternoon. Happy New Year, 2024, the year of the dragon. This is your Committee on Education. Today's date is the 16th of January. It's 2 o'clock p.m., and we are in conference room 329. We have today the Department of Education that's going to share some of their budgetary items and to also discuss things that are front of mind. Before we get started, I want to introduce our new Vice Chair, Vice Chair LaChica. She is taking over for Representative Martin, who was moved to be the Committee of Human Services Chair. So we look forward to working with her. And Vice Chair, you want to say a couple of words before we start?
No, I think, I know we have a lot of content to get through, but looking forward to the opportunity to be in this new role and to contribute where I can, but really to support Chair and work with the rest of my committee members as well as our colleagues in the Senate. But let's go ahead because I know we have a lot to talk about today.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. So we have in front of us Superintendent Keith Hayashi and CFO Brian Hallett. And without further ado, please get started.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Woodson, Vice Chair LaChica, and members of the committee. Superintendent Keith Hayashi, joined by Assistant Superintendent and Chief Financial Officer Brian Hallett. Thank you for the opportunity to share an overview of the Department of Education's biennium budget requests. With me today are Deputy Superintendents Heidi Armstrong, Tammy Oyadomari-Chan, and Kirk Otaguro, along with our team of Assistant Superintendents who are available to answer any specific questions committee members may have. Please allow me to start by saying many of you are aware that the public school system faces major challenges next fiscal year, with declining appropriations, both state and federal, and increasing expenses driven by service demands, inflation, and a goal to invest in public school students and our future. Amid this climate, it is important to recognize three things. First, the department remains firmly committed to ensuring that all of our graduates are globally competitive and locally committed for the future of our next generation and our state. Second, we have a strong momentum for academic recovery. Coming out of the pandemic, while students locally, nationally, and internationally were negatively impacted by the pandemic, Hawaii's public school students are seeing a stronger and faster recovery than many other states. Further investment is needed because the pandemic impacts on education are ongoing. And third, the department's FY25 general budget request is substantially below the FY23 appropriation level. At our core, we support students and learning. The Department of Education is charged with ensuring that every student, regardless of their abilities or socioeconomic status, is prepared to be successful for life after high school, on whatever path they choose, whether it's college or other post-secondary training, directly into the workforce, or military service. Our budget request aligns with and supports our ability to carry out this important mission. We ask for your support with a predictable and reliable base budget for public education that invests in students throughout their K-12 journey. Slide 4 reflects data that you're all familiar with. It speaks to the enormity of the responsibility we have to educate all students statewide and the human resources that supports this responsibility. Last year, the Board of Education released its strategic plan, which spans 6 years and challenges the department to focus resources on targeted activities designed around 3 overarching priorities. High-quality learning for all. Secondly, high-quality education workforce in all schools. And third, effective and efficient operations at all levels. To help accelerate our efforts as we work to achieve the goals and desired outcomes in the strategic plan, we are focusing on what we are calling high-leverage initiatives, as indicated on slide 6. These are targeted areas that we know we need to dedicate resources to in order to best support our students. Areas like vulnerable populations. The pandemic exacerbated achievement gaps for our most vulnerable students. We need to provide differentiated and targeted support in the classroom, school, and community to improve educational outcomes for student groups, including our Pacific Islander and Native Hawaiian students, English learners, and students with disabilities. Another area, workforce readiness. We need to ensure we're graduating students who are workforce ready and can earn a living wage and thrive and contribute here in Hawaii. As mentioned earlier, we have a strong momentum coming out of the pandemic. Our student performance on the National Assessment for Educational Progress, represented here by grade 4 reading results, demonstrates that our students fared better than most states in recovering from the pandemic impacts on learning. While the nation as a whole showed drops across the board, Hawaii's 4th and 8th graders held steady on 3 of 4 NAEP assessments. This slide shows a long, steady trend of improvement for Hawaii's 4th graders reading compared with the national average. While we are not where we ultimately want our students to be, we are making solid progress, and our public school students are doing better than their national peers. When you break down the national NAEP results by state and compare the results from before and after the pandemic, you can see that Hawaii's 4th graders are outpacing the country in recovering from pandemic as measured on the NAEP. In reading, our 4th graders are ranked number 1. And in math, our 4th graders ranked in the top 5 states. We are seeing a strong recovery in our statewide Smarter Balance assessments as well, which measures English language arts and mathematics proficiency for students in grades 3 through 8 and 11. We are very encouraged by this, and it speaks to the incredible work of our students, teachers, and schools. But we know there is much more work to be done to further accelerate student learning and success. This slide contains new information out of Stanford University. Researchers took a look at the long-term financial impacts of the pandemic on students by correlating academic learning loss with states' GDP and personal income. You can see that Hawaii, shown in orange, is in a much better position than most states. That's because our state is among the leaders in the nation in academic recovery, as discussed on the previous slides. The impact of the academic gains of our Hawaii public schools have a positive long-term economic impacts for our students and their future, and the future of our state overall. In speaking with our school principals, they consistently credit 2 major investments for accelerating learning and recovery. The first is additional resources in the classroom and at the school via the Weighted Student Formula, or WSF, and expanded summer learning opportunities at no cost to families. Our schools are making progress in spite of ongoing challenges from the pandemic. For example, student absenteeism continues to challenge schools in Hawaii and the nation. We have been able to make progress because of the resources, including federal funds, that have been invested to address these challenges. The federal pandemic recovery grants are ending, and other parts of federal funding are in jeopardy in Congress. Students need sustained investment to continue to make a difference now and for the future. Thanks to your investments in public education, along with federal resources, our schools have made gains. We need your continued support and investment for the future of our students and our state. I'd like to now turn things over to CFO Brian Hallett to speak to our federal funds and the details in our budget requests. CFO Hallett.
Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. Chair Woodson, Vice Chair LaChica, and committee members. I'll be going over the next 9 slides to cover topics that we are asked to present to the Finance and the Ways and Means Committee. This is a testimony format that they've prescribed. I'll go a little faster than we did with the money committees because I understand this is subject matter and you've got a lot on your agenda today. So starting with the first slide, federal funds major recurring grants. I think the point of this slide is to really communicate that there is some challenge or headwind that we're facing in terms, or uncertainty in relation to our federal funds going forward. We've all been reading about the issues in Congress, in particular the House of Representatives, and the challenges they have passing a budget. We can see the first three rows are those that we have very grave concerns over: Title I, Title II, Title III. You can see, we don't know yet what the final federal fiscal year 24 appropriation will be. That is the appropriation which will determine what we have to work with in fiscal year 25 or next fiscal year. So we will continue to update this committee as further information becomes available, but there does seem to be some pretty substantial differences in the House and the Senate drafts. Next slide, federal fund pandemic relief. These funds have been used to offset cuts of over $100 million for the budget, and they've provided resources to sustain and develop programs to offset learning loss and social emotional needs over the pandemic. Very important funds. You can see a total $640 million alone for just the ESSER funds. And this is the grant that's coming to an end, September 30, 2024. For all intents and purposes, we're working very diligently to make sure these funds are fully expended, and we're targeting to be essentially complete with the spending by June 30, 2024, the end of this fiscal year. The intent there is we want to make sure we don't lapse any of these funds and make their full use to benefit the students. We're not at risk of clawbacks or lapsing funds at this point. A question that's come up a number of times, though, is there a chance that there will be further pandemic assistance or COVID relief funds going forward? And we have no indications that there are, so just wanted to communicate that and be very clear that we are not hearing anything coming out of Congress that both Houses and the Senate are looking to appropriate further funds. Therefore, we are facing a very substantial fiscal cliff. We have averaged over $170 million a year from these funds over the 4 years from 21, 22, 23, and fiscal year 24. Next slide, non-general funds. This is just links to, next slide please, reports that are annually required for each of our non-general funding sources. In here, there's information on revenues and expenditures, projected and actual information, measures of effectiveness, and appropriated and planned characters of expenditures. You can look at that at your leisure. Next slide is for budget requests. I'm going to start by summarizing the department's and board-approved budget. So this slide covers fiscal years 23, 24, and 25. What we see in the first chart in blue, in the first bar, that's the general fund appropriations the department was provided in fiscal years 23. Fiscal year 24 is the current fiscal year that we're in. The blue portion of the bar represents our general fund appropriation. The green represents the portion of the discretionary funds appropriated to the governor that have been allocated to the department, or $55 million. The third bar represents the fiscal year 25 appropriation in blue. The governor's supplemental budget request in orange of $111 million, and the department's unmet request, it's not included in the governor's budget, of $86 million. So in total, the department was seeking $198 million on top of our existing appropriation, which is what you can see, and Superintendent mentioned it is less than our current year's general fund appropriation. It is also less than the fiscal year 23 appropriation level. Even if everything we're asking for were to be funded, it is still less. Next slide. Opportunities and challenges for fiscal year 25 and beyond. I think Superintendent has mentioned the first couple of the state funding cliff. We have over $100 million available to us this year that we do not have resources for to sustain next year. The federal fund cliff with the ending of the ESSER funds. We have high inflation in food service, bus, utilities. We have challenges with continuing to address the pandemic-related impacts on student learning. It's taking longer than initially anticipated when Congress first acted to provide pandemic relief funds. But as covered, we are making good progress. We are a good investment there. And fifth, the strategic plan, the commitments that we have to provide high-quality learning for all, high-quality educator workforce, and efficient and effective operations at all of our levels. Next slide. This is just a quick summary of the department's budget request. You can see the current appropriation of $2.03 billion. We're asking for $198 million. In the next column, you can see that, and the last column, you see what our appropriation would be if our entire department's request were to be funded. Just something to point out is our budget request is made up of 64 general fund line items, 40 of which we actually have funding for in the current year, whether it's from the $55 million allocated by the governor, or we had over $40 million of funding provided this year on a one-time basis that we don't have sustained funding for next year in areas such as utilities and workers' comp and some critical basic needs. So again, half of our request is essentially to maintain what we're currently doing this year. We also do have some new requests, such as summer school next year at $20.9 million, where we see the drop-off of the ESSER funds. We've been providing summer to over 27,000 students a summer. We've been doing it since summer of 2021, 22, 23. We are okay for this coming summer, summer 24. It's summer 25 that is in question, and that's what this request is seeking assistance for. Another example, we have $18 million for student transportation, contract cost increases that are being coming into effect next fiscal year. We do also have some new expenses, such as the VP and EA contract or pay increases. That's $18 million next year. Another big one is food service, $20 million increase in costs for next year. Just some quick context, and in our testimony tables, in particular tables 4 and table 6 that you can get to in a link from here, you can see all of our requests, what made it into the governor's budget and what did not. Next slide is summarizing what is in the governor's request. It's $111 million, for which we are extremely grateful for the support that the governor has been able to provide in his request. It is providing for many critical basic needs for costs such as food service, bus transportation, utilities, and workers' compensation. But as you'll see in the next slide, there are equally important areas that are not included. These items would primarily fund instructional and student supports. Okay, next slide. This is probably a better view to actually get a sense of what is in and what isn't in the governor's budget request of what we asked for. This is not in the EDN format that we normally communicate with the legislature, which I know is not the best way to communicate about what we're asking for. So try to break it down into more descriptive categories here. So for example, weighted student formula, we're asking for $33 million. That's to address small schools, to address EL student needs, to address inflation and sustain programmatic funding with the loss of ESSER funds. Governor's budget at this point includes 0 for that one. So you can see there's the difference there of $33 million and so on. So as I mentioned, we did get a lot of basic critical needs funded. We didn't get funding for most of our instructional and student supports. And the next slide is just a bar chart that's just graphically depicting that same information. And with that, I'd humbly ask for the opportunity to continue to work with this committee, the chair, members. We ask for your support for the governor's operating budget supplemental request. And to the extent that state revenues will allow for it, we also ask for further consideration of the items that did not make it into the governor's budget. And with that, I'll turn it over to Deputy Otaguro to speak to the CIP portion of the budget.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Happy New Year. Kurt Otaguro, Deputy Superintendent of Operations. Before I start, I just want to say thank you. As Superintendent and CFO said, without your support, your continued support, the department wouldn't be able to achieve nearly what we have done and what is in front of us. So thank you very much. I'll cut to the chase. There's 2 slides with regard to CIP. The first slide on page 23 is just what we started with, and you can see the progression. We got about 76% in the first year and about 30% in the second year, which we're very grateful for. But that doesn't tell the whole story. So on page 24 is where I want to focus on. You can see that the columns are such that we started with 270 and 273. The governor has provided 85 million, and so what we're asking for is approximately 355,770. And it breaks down into 8 basic groups of lump sum requests. So you know that we've been very lucky that the legislature has provided very specific line item funding for CIP projects by respective schools. In addition to that, the lump sum funding for different aspects, whether it's deferred maintenance, health and safety, compliance, are equally as important. And the reason why I say that is we don't plan for everything. Sometimes things break, and we need the ability to be flexible, not specific by school, which we schedule, but because we have to react quickly. And so lump sum is a tool that we appreciate so that we can react quicker. There is a new request that was not funded previously, and that's on the second line. It's called lump sum project completion. And so all that means is in addition to all the CIP projects that we do have, and right now we have about, I didn't put that down in the presentation, but we're working on approximately 560 CIP projects right now, totaling about 951 million. So they're active. So of the 2 billion that we publish, a little under 1 billion is active. That about 68%, 648 million, are in the contracting phase, in some phase of doing that. The other 303 million, or roughly 381 projects, are in planning and design. And that is in addition to approximately 2,900 smaller projects that we also leverage using our pre-qualified contractors. You may have heard the term job order contracting, JOC. And so we've processed another 352 million through that process. So really, when you look at DOE, we're working on, at any given time, 3,480 projects, both for 1.3 billion. So these are things that we are doing, and I know that the media has captured what we're not doing, and we can explain that later. But project completion funds is an important aspect because the timeline for construction has extended past what the average has been, and the average has been normally about 3 years. It is now averaging approximately 5 years, and in some cases 6 years, depending on the county that's involved. And so therefore, all that happens is cost escalations and things out of our control that increase the cost when the appropriation first started. So project completion funds was a nice tool for us to compensate so we could complete the projects. That appropriation was not awarded to us last year, which prompted us to take different actions on our process. The other request for 45 million is deferred maintenance. We could use 100 million. We could actually use 200 million. So whatever funding is there can be applied for our aging schools. And you know, I don't have to preach to you that our schools are aging. 144 million, about 40% of our total request, that's in federal funding. So those are awards that the federal government has given for our military schools to serve our students that are part of the military, and in some cases just surrounding areas. So that's a tremendous gift that we are focusing on. Our match is going to be 20%, or approximately 36 million of that. So 144 million is actually federal funding. The remaining amounts are just that. The last category of 42.7 million, those are projects that you all have provided for our schools that's carrying over into this fiscal year. So we appreciate all the support that you have, but we still have more to do, right? And so I just want to share that as we've had prior discussions with this committee, as well as the working group committee, we look forward to having direct conversations about our processes and solving our issues together. And I think that's all I want to say for now. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Deputy. We're going to shift to slide 25. Brian, do you want to speak to slide 25? Or that's just the tables. That's testimony
Links to
tables.
all the testimony tables, breaks down our budget request tables 4 and 6 in particular.
Thank you. Deputy Oyadamari Chan is here to speak to the West Maui response. Deputy.
Thank you. This August, Hurricane Dora affected all of Maui Island during the first week of the school year. All schools except for Hana had a delayed opening because of the disaster. Our 4 Lahaina schools had a pre-registration enrollment of just over 3,000 and about 320 employees. Through community meetings, contacts with families, and opportunities to return to learning through other schools, at our Lahaina learning hubs, in our community locations, through Kaiapuni, Huaka'i, and distance learning, we were able to make contact with virtually all the families of the pre-registered students. Current enrollment in Lahaina is lower than it used to be. It's currently about 2,100 students. And however, we are expecting students to return when the Pulelehua site for our King Kamehameha III temporary school is opened. And also, based on housing availability, Lahaina's families relocated to many other locations, and we know that Lahaina students are enrolled in more than 50 other schools at this point, and also charter schools, private schools, and some have moved out of state. On the next slide, we know that many students on Maui were affected by the disaster. The FEMA shelter records tell us that almost 8,000 students were affected and participated in the shelter program, and 1,200 students resided directly in the burn zone. In addition to the impacts on our students, our employees were also impacted. We're concerned about the well-being of the employees as well as the workforce for our schools. We're working with the governor, FEMA, and the Department of Human Services to prioritize DOE employees for housing assistance. Also, our campuses were affected by the hurricanes, high winds, and fire. Among Lahaina schools, we reopened schools once they were cleaned and environmental testing was completed. You can see in the next slide a checklist, a punch list of the various kinds of safety measures that we were looking for to reopen our Lahaina schools. We assess health and safety across a number of dimensions to ensure a safe environment for our students and employees. Detailed information, including links to the test results for soil testing, water testing, and such, are available online. We're continuing to do what are called wipe tests to check regularly every other week to make sure that the environment continues to be safe. Next slide. And the next slide. Our King Kamehameha III elementary school on Front Street was damaged beyond repair. FEMA has contracted with the Army Corps of Engineers to build a temporary school for King Kamehameha III Elementary. The location is near the Kapalua Airport, and construction is underway. We anticipate receiving the keys in late February and having students attend in early April after spring break. Next slide. We know that our students and employees need mental health support. There has been training to work with students, as well as support specifically for employees and for students, so separate support for employees from students. There are school-based supports that are in person and through telehealth. There are also community supports available for mental health. Next slide. In addition to the mental health support, there are other supports being provided. I want to highlight 2 areas that private philanthropy, is supporting. The first is that we are providing school meals at no cost for all students for the rest of this school year. And employees who need meal support are also being provided support in Lahaina schools. And then the University of Hawaii is providing scholarships for Lahaina Luna seniors to attend any one of the University of Hawaii campuses. And when I talk to the Lahaina Luna seniors, they are quite excited, and it's giving them about the opportunity to pursue higher education with tuition costs being subsidized, and they're thinking about what to do for their future. So the situation in Lahaina continues to be challenging, but our people are resilient, and we're committed to the future of our students, our employees, and the Lahaina community. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, the department does want to reach out and thank the other agencies that were involved in helping us to support our schools and our students and our employees. The Department of Accounting and General Services, Department of Health, Departments of Transportation, and Maui County, and all working together. The Department of Education is excited about the future for education and moving beyond the pandemic. We are proud of the efforts of our teachers, administrators, and staff across our tri-level system who have propelled us to leading the nation in academic recovery. And I think that's really important to emphasize that I'm so proud of the work of our students, our teachers, our employees, our communities, our tri-level system, and our staff at the complex and state offices that have all rallied together to support our students. We look forward to building on that foundation with our high leverage initiatives to continue to move public education forward. Thank you for the opportunity to share your continued support and investment in our students and their future and the future of our state overall. My team and I are standing by for questions regarding our budget requests. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Superintendent, and thank you to the other presenters as well. Okay, members, questions? Okay, go ahead.
So thank you, Superintendent. And I think CFO Hallett might also be helpful in answering this question. I'm not sure, but I'm curious as to what other more progressive states are doing around this cliff, because we're not the only state that faces it. And while other states are funded primarily by property taxes, while we are not, I think our situation is unique in that the state legislature provides most of the funding. So if you can speak a little bit to how other states or even districts are dealing with this looming cliff.
I don't think it's been handled particularly well anywhere, as far as I can tell by reading publications like EdWeek. This is a nationwide challenge. I think a lot of states and school districts are having very similar conversations about how to continue to sustain funding. Yeah, with that, I mean, I think our economy is probably no better than the rest of the nation. I think everyone, I think, has been pleasantly surprised by the lack of a recession and a stronger economy. And I think hopefully there's going to be similar conversations about how do we restore resources. One comment about the federal pandemic relief funds, I think they were really intended to bridge a gap, a fiscal gap, and I think they've served that purpose. And now we're reaching the other side of that gap, and we are looking for sustained funding from the state.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay. Rep Matayoshi first.
Sort of proximity. Can we get a quick update on the centralized kitchen progress? Maybe the expected timeline for that? Completion?
Representative, thank you very much for the question related to centralized kitchen. The department has looked at the means to develop the centralized kitchen. I think there are plans in place connected to leveraging the centralized kitchen, regional kitchen concept to help support our cafeterias related to being able to leverage additional locally sourced product. We can definitely get you additional information for that, Deputy, unless you have something that you can share with Representative Matayoshi. Maybe we can get back to him on that.
Yeah, we'll give you additional details. I would tell you that we're looking at specifically in Wahiawa, we have other appropriations that did not make sense with regard to the cost associated with that appropriation. And so right now we're focused on the central kitchen in Wahiawa, which is a combination of other projects. There's a debate on the size and the cost. So again, we're looking at an appropriation that was originally issued and whether or not we can achieve that vision of in this case would be a 30,000 square foot centralized kitchen. And so that's where we're at this point. We're evaluating whether or not the current appropriation can pay for that.
I think, Representative, definitely we can get you more information on that concept.
Okay, so no timeline is what I'm hearing.
Right now, we're in the process of evaluating that, so I can get you more information, definitely.
Okay, thank you. A got
Thank
a
you.
couple other ones, but I don't.
Go ahead. I just want to ask quickly, is that project on the lapse list? It is on the lapse list. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Representative Maiyoshi.
Oh, okay, me again. You know, a couple of years ago, I was working with Schatz's office to adjust the federal reimbursement rate for the breakfasts and lunches, and we got in contact with DOE, and DOE got in contact with U.S. Department of Ag, and that was good. I think we got a temporary adjustment. How is it going with the more permanent adjustment upwards from our reimbursement rate of, I think what used to be about 17%?
You have information on that?
Alaska's getting 62. So,
Right, we're still underfunded.
okay.
So, and so what we need to do is get an audit by the USDA with regard to the current cost of what it costs to feed a student here, breakfast and lunch. And so right now we're running a deficit simply because of the free meals. About 50% of our entire students qualify. But more important, for every meal that we are issuing, we're not recovering everything from the federal government and from a USDA. So you're right. That is a shortfall that we recognize, and we're working with our partners to see if we can get that audit expedited so we can get a better cost now.
Anything we can do to help you expedite that thing? Because that's money we're leaving on the table.
Yes, every day. Every
So
day
what-
there's
what
a,
does the audit need to come from us, or is it
no,
is it?
it has to come from the
progress?
USDA. Yeah, it's scheduled. And so
Okay.
all we're doing is trying to see if we can, interestingly enough, get an audit sooner than you'd like. But in this case, it makes sense.
Okay.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, if you talk about 100,000 meals a day, right?
It's federal side is what you're
Yes,
saying. that
yes,
we-
it's the federal side. It's not the state. So right now, what we're requesting for is a subsidy to help us offset that shortfall, which is why we're putting it in the operating budget for this year.
Okay.
Uh,
Thank you.
Representative, we'll definitely get back to you, and we look forward to working in partnership with you in how we can better support our students.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
you.
it. I've been pushing on the federal side, but I thought you guys had it kind of handled, so I'm a little surprised that it's stalling again. I'm sure Chair will, and everyone is happy to put some pressure wherever we can, if that's what you need.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And when is that USDA audit scheduled right now? Is it scheduled?
Yeah, it was scheduled for probably late this year, but we're just trying to nail that down. Yeah, the
Late-
sooner the better.
Late defined as
Late,
November or?
yeah. But we'll get back to you. I don't have a specific month, and that's what we're reaching out to them.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Capella, or Representative Capella.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for being here. I think my question may be best directed at CFO Hallett. In your presentation, you show that the governor's budget request doesn't fully restore the budget cuts that were implemented last year. If the legislature fails to make the DOE whole, then what is the specific impact on student learning and student programs? Specifically, what, in your words, what would have to be cut?
Go ahead.
I'll speak. Thank you for the question. If I may
Yes,
respond
please.
first.
Please,
In,
Superintendent.
I think in looking at our how ESSER has funded supports for our schools, definitely in talking with school principals, as we shared, those added resources were provided an ability for us to support our students both academically as well as socio-emotionally. There are different programs that schools, based on their unique demographics, have been able to implement, and so, based on data, been able to support their students. With those federal ESSER funds ending at the end of this school year, the additional funds that we're requesting would help to sustain some of those programs that our schools are have implemented. For one of the things we talked about is summer school for students. Also, if I can ask, let's see, Deputy Superintendent Heidi Armstrong, who actually takes care of the academic component of the house as well as the social-emotional side. She can speak to some of those challenges.
Yes, thank you for the question. And we were able to not take advantage of ESSER funds, but really strategically use ESSER funds to provide much needed resources for our students. And what we're finding is those resources are still of value. Like Superintendent mentioned, summer school was one of the two key strategies that our schools are telling us really helped impact our students' recovery from the devastating effects of the pandemic. We also have recognized that students' mental health, we're seeing more mental health needs than we've ever seen before. And so that requires not only programs and strategies, but also trained personnel to assist our schools and our students with those needs. We know that social emotional learning has always been important, but we found more deficits in those areas recently because of the trauma that our students have been through. And so we have resources such as an SEL, a social emotional learning survey, that helps our schools know what characteristics our students are exhibiting that are positive and what characteristics are they lacking or need support in developing to help make them a successful student. And because of that, we've been able to establish a dashboard and a playbook that helps our teachers access strategies when these deficits are recognized. So we've been able to build a database of resources and support that we would not want to see disappear due to lack of funding.
Is that everything? Okay. I have a follow-up to that then as well. One of the things you also mentioned is that it doesn't really necessarily account for inflation and that things are going to become more expensive. So what is, I guess, do you have any data that shows or charts that may show what it would look like if you were to account for the inflation that you foresee you're going to be expecting, and how that would impact the lack of funding that you may be getting, or the I guess, do you have anything that adjusts for the inflation?
So we don't have a way to automatically adjust for inflation. It's something that I really wish at some point we could have a discussion on, because it's natural. It's occurring in the background. It's a driver for state revenues. As inflation occurs, state revenues go up. We then have to come back and ask. And that's what I think you see before you in our package of requests. Bus, food, utilities. You see a lot of inflation-related items, which fortunately did make it into the governor's budget. But we don't have an automatic mechanism to account for that. We have to come back and ask one by one. And I think our supplemental budget request did, to the extent we could, account for the inflation that we foresee for next year. And hopefully, as we're reading the reports, that inflation is tapering. But it has been, I think we all know how it's 9%, in the last couple of years each year. It's been very high.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Martin.
Hi. So in our working group, the wildfire response working group, we had some recommendations in the report that didn't make it into the bill around making school campuses more fire safe. And I was alarmed when I learned from the department how much completely unmanaged land that there is that is owned by the DOE that is immediately adjacent to the more manicured campuses. And I understand that in your health and safety block budget request, maybe in there is an intention to clear some of those lands to have buffers, fireproofing, et cetera, for schools. But I just wanted to clarify and make sure that that will be part of, how the funds are used, since it didn't make it into any legislation that I'm aware of.
Thank you very much for the question.
Yep. Thanks, Rep. Martin. You're right. When we originally submitted the budget, we put in $25 million for wildfire, specific for Maui. We know that it's probably should be statewide, because as you said, we have 21 million square feet of space throughout the state, so there's a lot. But we did put in a specific request that got taken out, but my understanding is there is a state fund for this wildfire. And so we'll need to check with BNF if how that fund is going to be applied
For prevention across our DOE campuses?
for those kinds of things. Not just DOE campuses. This is a statewide fund to address wildfire and cut back in the brush and things of that nature.
Is that something that's separate from a bill that will be introduced this legislative session? Or is that a budget that already exists?
No, that I believe that would be a request coming in, but I don't know.
Okay, because
yeah.
there is a bill for DLNR to do wildfire prevention work, but I have talked to them to see if that could include state lands like the DOE, and I found that it cannot. That they have more than enough of their own land, that they will not be using that for DOE lands. So I just want to make sure that somewhere in your plan, somewhere in your requests, is funding for that safety measure. That's all. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Martin. We'll be sure to connect up with you after the hearing today. Thank you.
So the 25 million that you're referring to, is that for state land, or what's the specifics around that?
It was specific to address the issues that we're cutting with in Maui, Lahaina specific, and that also included things like creation of evacuation routes. Thankfully, like as Superintendent said, DOT helped us a great deal to get that route established, but it's temporary. So we need to work with DOT to permanently do that. For example, the big rain came in and it washed out some of the gravel kind of thing. So yeah, evacuation routes are top of mind, cutting away brush. This is not the only school in Lahaina that had one way in and one way out. So yes, we have some significant challenges ahead of us that we need to address, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay. Let's go with Representative Garcia first, and then Representative Pruso.
Thank you, Chair. Question on school buses. I know last year was mentioned, of course, that there be major cutbacks in that. Lots of families have called our office about that to ask what's being done from the DOE to find drivers, if there are any programs or incentives or whatever that's being done.
Thanks for that question, and I know Representative LaChica is equally as interested in this as well, which we appreciate. It has to come to light. I have some statistics here, just no excuses, but starting in 2017, way back, we had approximately 465 drivers, right? Of which 408 of those. We had more than that. I'm just looking at Oahu. We had 408 statewide drivers for regular ed, and another 266 drivers for special ed. That's how we started. And as the years progressed, we lost that. We had 288 drivers, so a little less than half dropped for regular, and held on special ed at 237. Today, we're at 265 drivers and 242 for special education. So it's about a 40% drop, first of all. That's just the workforce. The pandemic has prompted that. The good news is, as we took action, thanks to the legislature supporting some of the fiscal side of it, earlier the year we had 245 drivers. We're back up to 265 drivers for regular ed. And special ed was 211 drivers. Now we're back up to 242. So some of the initiatives that have been taking place, in addition to the governor's emergency proclamation, have helped us. Now, is that solving the entire issue? No. It's a step in the right direction. Working with our bus companies, we have 8 of them currently. That will go down to 3. This year now, come July 1st, we're executing the next term of that contract, and 3 contractors will provide the same services throughout the state. So the short term is talking to the companies now, having incentives, the temporary waiver of an S designation on CDL licenses have helped, but it's just a stopgap. There's an employment issue that we need to address that, unfortunately, I don't have a specific answer for you right now. We are looking at some workforce development things, but that's a longer term issue. I need drivers soon, right?
Thank you.
Okay, Rep. Paruso.
Sorry, second set of questions. Actually, this is under prioritization, and it's a two-part question. So looking at that gap, the $86 million, right, that was requested by the Board of Education, but not included in the governor's request or in the governor's budget. If you had additional sources of funding that supplemented, did not supplant existing funding, what would be your highest priority for the items that weren't funded in the governor's budget? That's the first question.
Thank you for the question, our representative. Just to be sure that I'm clear on the question, so that based on what was funded from the governor's budget,
Correct.
what would be our highest priority should nothing else be funded?
Yes, I'm just thinking the council of revenues projection has gone up. They're looking at about $250 million more, and everybody will be jostling for those funds.
Right.
What would be your top priority if those funds were used, or if we suddenly discovered other funds?
Our top priority definitely would be focus on teaching and learning, which is our core mission for our students.
So weighted student formula, or?
As we move forward with schools, that's definitely our mission. But at the same time, we also know that we need operational funds to be able to sustain our system from which the students will be learning. So I think CFO Hallett had shared that we're very thankful for the governor's support in those areas. And so having to choose between those two would make it extremely difficult, I think.
I'm asking you to choose.
So some context, I think we're always asked to prioritize, and it's always a very difficult thing, and it's a hypothetical in a sense. If it's the difference between a $5 million of additional funds versus $20 million of additional funds, could kind of rejigger the priorities. It's not, it might be WSF, but would we want or need all $33 million and not? Well, what about Panorama at $850,000? Might we want to do maybe some Panorama, some WSF, or some combination? So I think we always want to be involved in that conversation, and when resources are made available, if we can engage, and always try to have the most impact with the limited dollars that we all have available to us. So
that's fair.
It's really hard to answer that question.
I know that's a hard question,
but I think we've acknowledged that weighted student formula and summer school are two areas that have made a very big difference and that are not funded. So
especially important for the most vulnerable students, I think, is the key point, and that I would urge you to really focus your attention on, like how much that support has really helped our students with special needs and our EL students. Second part of the question, if you don't mind.
Yes, no, definitely, no, I don't mind. I just wanted to point out too that vulnerable students and vulnerable population to support our students is one of our high leverage initiatives to be able to support them both academically as well as socio-emotionally, and hence the requests for specific WSF to support that population of students, because you're right, they do need the most support from us, as well as other personnel to support them in learning, such as the bilingual school home assists and so forth. So they're all important.
Okay, and the reason I asked that first question was because we constantly hear some grumbling about funding for the top layers of the DOE, right? So I don't, I think that the whole system is important, but that is a constant refrain that we have to respond to. And so I think that's something that you should be able to respond to as well. And I'd like to hear more about like how you're going to be funding down to the school level. So, sorry, that's just my, sorry, soapbox. But the second question, more directed on slide 24, the last line of that chart is it's a CIP, various specific school projects. Can you get into a little bit examples of what those projects might be if they're not deferred maintenance?
Wait, you're referring to approximately 40? Was it 40?
It's various specific school projects.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so what was appropriated in the biennium that's carrying over to fiscal year 2025?
So these are the legislatively requested
Right,
CIP.
so Alva Scott
Okay.
has a design and construction for a health room. Baldwin has an appropriation for 10 million, which is a big
Yeah.
part. Yeah, that
It's
kind
okay,
of
I
stuff.
get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
So that's what that is.
Yeah, thank you. And that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any other questions?
I have one more.
Okay, Rep. Garcia.
Thank you, Chair. Question regarding Kapolei High School, and this is about CIP. Don't know if this project was on the lapse list, but the principal had reached out. The stadium lights, the Alvin Nagasako stadium lights there, has been broken for a while. They tried to reach out. They had I guess, a contract to fix it, which was executed. They were starting it, and then they were told the funding is no longer there. The principal says that this project is not on that lapse list. So can you guys confirm that, or what's going on there?
Yeah, I have that. So you're right. It's not on the lapse list, but what it is we assigned that project to our job order contracting. So a lump sum funding that is currently underfunded. So we have every intention of fixing it, but we have to now wait until the legislative process goes through to get additional deferred maintenance funding for that. That's all that is.
Okay.
It's timing.
Cool. And then lastly, regarding the Ho'opili Elementary School that's still being, I guess, planned, and the East Kapolei, any updates on that? I do know that 100,000 was recently released for a study, a feasibility study on East Kapolei High School. Any update on that?
Yeah, we can get you more specific. We have met with Gentry. There are 2 parcels that are ready to go. The high school will be probably sometime in April, May. Yeah, SFA. And that has been turned over to SFA. And then there's the elementary school that you're referring to that is ready to go.
Okay.
But we need to work with the School Facilities Authority since they're in charge of new schools now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Matayoshi.
I just had a quick question because you mentioned repair and maintenance being a huge issue, and I agree. It seems like we're short of workers, though, to even do the CIP projects that we set out for you folks. If we did give you more money for repair and maintenance, I mean, do we even have the people to do more repair and maintenance at this point without taking off of CIP, or are you saying that we need more repair and maintenance in lieu of CIP so that we have the personnel to accomplish it?
I'm glad you brought that up. So repair and maintenance or lump sum, we really use that in 2 fashions, right? It's how schools report a problem to begin with is called a work order. So if something's not working, they will report it as broken, fix it. And so we have operating funds to do that if it can be fixed fairly easily. When it cannot, and it's determined that it's more than just replacing a faucet or changing a toilet, simple things, then we have to define it as a project. And then we have to go out to bid. We have job order and contracting or preferred small contractors. So the contractors are pre-selected. So if those projects fall into that category, lump sum funding is very effective, and we can get a lot of that done, but it's mostly outsourced because it's a larger project. The third category is what you're referring to with CIP, line item specific. And yes, that is something that we struggle with. We have a lot of them. We would love to have more dialogue with the legislature to see if we could categorize some of those kinds of line items. Not every single one, but a good example would be ADA compliance, where the same type of work gets done throughout the schools. Today, we're lucky that the legislature will provide individual schools with that funding, but that means I got to issue an RFP every single time. So if I have 12 of those, and I think we do have 12, that's 12 different processes with paperwork that I have to go through, versus if you gave us a lump sum amount for ADA, period. And then we can provide a proviso with which schools should be addressed first. Then I can issue one contract and be a lot more efficient that way. That's all.
Okay, but do we have the people to do it? and it occurs to me that some CIP, like repairing the Kapunahala parking lot or things like that, might fall under kind of repair and maintenance too. But if you guys did more repair and maintenance, would that necessarily be cutting back on CIP? Is it one or the other?
No, it's both. I mean, CIP is necessary to build new classrooms and things, playground equipment. I mean, those projects are important.
Should
No
repair and
question about it.
maintenance then be, I mean, I know we normally, when my office calls around, we get CIP requests from the various schools or the various districts. I mean, should they be including key repair and maintenance issues instead in there
Yes.
along with it to be kind of valued alongside CIP?
You know, we're very fortunate to have the superintendent and the board behind relooking at our processes and really getting in front of some of these priorities. And actually, while the schools have full autonomy to make their own decisions, I think it's our job as state office to ensure that we show them what some of the deferred maintenance projects are. So as we prioritize this and they go to you for that prioritization, at least we can see all the different needs, whether it's something that's broken that should be fixed. I know it's sort of subject that I shouldn't bring up, but fire alarms is something that we need to get more proactive on. I know that they're old, and I know that it's going to break. That's one type of project that we should not wait until it breaks. That is something that we should have a proactive look at and anticipate the useful life and then apply funding to replace it before it breaks.
And
Those
I'm-
kind of things.
I'm in agreement. I think my problem is that everyone likes the shiny new thing, and when we get the requests, what we fight for as reps and senators, we'd fight for things in our district that we get that are suggested to us by principals that they're saying they need. I think just as important, or maybe more important, might be fixing the roof. Something not as amazing like a new playground equipment thing, but if we got that list and if we knew what to fight for, I think we could do it a lot more effectively. And I think that's what we need from you folks. I mean, I think we need to I think we as a body need to start fighting for repair and maintenance items alongside the new building items to make sure our schools aren't just, a new building right next to one that's falling apart. But we need your help to do it. So that's what I'm asking for, really.
Thank you very much, Representative, for that. We are actually in the process of revisiting how we're doing and how we're working together with our schools. And we look forward to working with the legislature because you are definitely an integral part of us getting to support our schools and our students. But what you bring up is correct, that we need to do a better job of that communication and how we're organizing our efforts.
Okay, thank you.
And I would say that we both need to do a better job, right? There needs to be communication between the ledge and the department because there's only so much funds that are available. And if there's a discrepancy between what the ledge wants and the department, there's different lists. How do we go about reconciling those two lists?
Yes.
Okay, Representative Martin first, and then
Thank you. So that conversation was a little confusing to me because I feel like I'm always begging for repair and maintenance, not for shiny new things. As Kurt Otaguro is very familiar with the issues in my district, right? We have field problems, our field lights are not working, our fields are cracked, our bleachers are condemned. That's all at Kailua High School. At Kalaheo, our locker rooms are falling apart. So to me, it's very confusing as a representative that I am begging for these projects that seem like they should just be standard, that the DOE should just be regularly trying to, do those projects without special outside requests. So I'm very interested in helping you folks change the system so that those kinds of things aren't seen as a perk, but just as routine of taking care of our schools. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I'll just add,
go ahead.
$45 million is a lot of money for deferred maintenance. $45 million is a lot of money. Divide that by 258 schools, it's only $174,000 per school. That's not nearly enough. And every school will need it. Now, they won't need it all at the same time. Many do. So, yeah, it's a law of large numbers. And that's why not to belabor the point, but a larger deferred maintenance pool would allow us to do more proactive things and not reactive.
Thank you. Thank you. Rep. Capella.
Thank you. Oh, ASO to grow, stay. I too am also begging, so that would be wonderful. However, I have a question because this came up today. There is a library in my district that's a brand new, it's talking about CIP projects. The money has been allotted. The problem is that it's waiting for one person in the DOE to sign off on the permit. So my question is, if we have these projects that are CIP that we do have money for, how many projects across our state are ready and just waiting for a signature that somewhere gets lost within the DOE's very large department? I'm speaking about the KL library, by the way.
KL.
Yes.
Yes.
Which
So-
I'm hoping will get signed.
So KL got signed.
The permit.
We need to apply for the permit. So that is a county rule,
Yeah, so we're waiting for a signature from DOE
which
to be
you
able
got.
to.
Which you got.
Okay.
So
Not
right.
according
you're-
to libraries.
No, we got that done. So it was a right of entry. There were a lot of questions about all the different things. But we'll get back to you. We'll get that back to you.
Okay.
Let's check with the libraries
Yeah.
and we'll coordinate our response.
But the permitting process, as you raise, is of a challenge, and that's something that we need to address collectively with the state. Yes.
Okay, just to streamline some of these issues, because I do wonder if there are other projects across the state that are having that same issue.
Thank you. Any other questions? Vice Chair LaChica, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I've been waiting. Thank you so much. My set of questions really have to do with kind of the systems and the, in place. I think there's no other bigger wake-up call than what we've experienced, in the past year. I believe the cancellation of school bus services, which was, my district was greatly affected, and then the millions of funding of CIP lapses. And, from our standpoint, nobody, and from your standpoint, it was, nobody wants to be surprised that we have these issues. And so with these happening, what has the department done, not just to react to this by, shifting around resources or maybe hiring new people, but what is now in place to, one, prevent this from happening again? What type of review process is in place to make sure that as we are spending down or encumbering some of these funding, that we are hitting certain targets and certain metrics? Is there a plan in place to restore, some of those routes? Equity was mentioned several times today. And so what is being done as part of the review process to look at schools statewide and really determine the level of need and priority for, the deferred repair and maintenance or some of the more urgent things such as like fire alarms. So I really want to kind of understand what has the department kind of set in motion and what is still needed, either from us or from on your end to help kind of make sure that we're taking some action to prevent this from happening again.
Thank you very much for the question, Vice Chair. You had mentioned the lapsing funds, and all of us were very much disappointed, and I was also very much disappointed in what had happened. We fully realize and understand that the legislators, together with school principals, work really hard to appropriate those funds to ensure that we have safe schools that we all can be proud of. So the department is in the process of developing a comprehensive real estate plan approach, which we refer to overall real estate optimization, or for short, we're calling it OREO. We recognize that our construction program has been a historical challenge over the years for a number of reasons, including the volume of projects and evolving industry practices, but also due to the inefficiencies of how we sometimes address capital improvement projects. Having safe, functional, and appealing learning environments in our public schools are critical to student success. And as I shared, we all want schools that are safe and that all of our communities can be proud of. Many of our CIP projects face challenges in costs and time to complete, and nearly all of our campuses have repair and maintenance backlogs that have built up over the years, as you had shared. Because of the volume of DOE projects on the books, last year the Department of Budget and Finance approached the department about funded projects with an upcoming lapse date of June 30th, 2024. Together, we took a hard look at the projects the department may not be able to encumber in time, and jeopardizing projects that you and your schools have worked so hard to advocate for. The OREO approach is part of our strategy to ensure that we don't have a situation like this again as we work to improve our CIP and R&M processes in the DOE. The department has significant assets across the state that perhaps can be better utilized, which the OREO approach will help with by collecting and analyzing this very important data. From there, we'll be better able to determine our next steps. This work will take several phases, and many of these phases will be done concurrently. Some of the phases include data gathering and inventory processes, process assessments and changes, and statutory and policy modifications, which we definitely look forward to engaging the legislature and all of you with. By taking this comprehensive approach, we're working to assure we can deliver great learning environments for our students and staff, and at the same time address many of the concerns that you've brought up today. We want the public to be proud of our schools. We want our campuses to be an integral and active part of each of our communities. We didn't get to this situation overnight, and the fixes that will take time to fully implement. But we have begun, and we're committed to this effort under the Board of Education's oversight. To execute this plan, we'll need the support of the legislature and the administration, but you have my commitment that we'll keep you informed and our progress and identify where all of you can most be helpful. So I've spent the last several weeks really taking a deeper dive into the issues related in our facilities area, and I want to thank all of our facilities folks that got together and really help to identify those issues. And so OREO moving forward, I think will again, looking at data and helping us to identify those areas that we need to really focus on will help to identify some of the areas that we need to improve in and moving forward.
Thank you. As a follow-up to that, I mean, this isn't a problem that, is new to us. I mean, there have been past studies on, our facilities, our asset management, a lot of these things in the past. Is that correct? That there have been, and have you been able to take a look at all, the other studies that have already been, requested by the legislature, as well as some of those recommendations? There's several that I always speak to some type of restructuring or, reorg, as you had alluded to, that's necessary to kind of improve on this process.
I believe there have been studies in the past related to facilities, and we're in the process of taking a look at that and reevaluating where we are now, which is part of the OREO process.
And what's the estimated time of completion for the study?
As we're looking to move this forward, we have begun. I can get you more information as we move forward with it, and which would include the process that we're engaged in. So I look forward to working with you and keeping you all abreast of the progress that we're making.
Thank you. Last question, Chair. Question for CFO Hallett. This is on the, so we received unprecedented amount, I think about almost $700 million in federal funding with ESSER funds and ARPA, which within these, what percent of these funds, or what's the amount from these funds that is currently being requested in this new budget request out of those funds? And then, from the funds that are expiring, you had mentioned that we want to be able to continue certain services. You mentioned support services. You mentioned summer schools. Is there a breakdown for what was funded under the, either 700 or the 400 pot for like ARPA that you wish to continue, and kind of what is this based on? Like, is it what is this based on in terms of how, you level of prioritization for the requests?
So we'll certainly be able to provide the committee with the breakdown of those line items that are a direct continuation of funds. I'm sorry, I apologize, I don't have that off the top of my head. The biggest one, though, as we've talked about, is that $20.9 million for summer school. Also, we've allocated $169 million to complex areas to support needs different in each unique community, and we really would translate to the weighted student formula request. But we can follow up. You know, I did mention things like Panorama. That's something that we are using ESSER funds for, and there's going to be others. Thank you for the question.
Okay. And then, is there a current plan in place for the remaining funds that will be expiring in September? And are these going to be, maintenance, and we're not creating new programs that we may not have the funding to sustain in the future?
Are you referring to the balance of ESSER
balance,
funds
yeah.
as of the end of November? I'm sorry, I forgot. I have the
That's
chart with me.
expiring by September. I believe it was.
I believe it was 100.
Where is it? 200? Was it 100 something?
Yeah,
$144 million.
144, and I know a month later is at the end of December 31st. That was down to 129 million. So that's the amount that I'm talking about, that we're focusing on spending down to making sure that nothing is lapsed and targeting June 30. So we're anticipating not having challenges in terms of spending those funds. We are targeting June 30 to make sure that we have 3 months left in our performance period, meaning we can still incur work against those funds to make sure that nothing is lost.
Right.
But all funds at this point are allocated. They're in play. They're being expended by schools and offices statewide.
Right. Yeah, I think the data and then capturing those, tracking, that is really important, because what I'm really trying to get at is, I mean, it was a huge opportunity for us to have that level of funding. And we want to make sure that it did, as mentioned, it did go towards a lot of the things that we haven't funded in the past, combating like learning loss. And if it is being used to continue to make sure we're going above and beyond, like for certain schools, then there's a way for us to really determine how to prioritize what is working. And then for the other items that, were funded, measuring that against, certain types of performance measures. Maybe that's a decision that we need to make if it's, in terms of like prioritizing where the budget requests go.
I would just add that there is a study in process being conducted by WestEd, and it will be out shortly. I think
On
one of the
these
big
funds?
conclusion is weighted student formula and summer school are for the ESSER funds, specific to
Okay.
ESSER funds.
And did you know when that was coming out?
Maybe a couple months away. They're still working on
Okay.
it. Yeah, it's a little behind.
Okay, thank you.
But we've seen preliminary conclusions from that, and it's like I mentioned, it aligns with our request.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Representative Prusso.
This question is actually for Deputy Superintendent Odeguro. So I've been waiting for, and I haven't yet seen, but it might have escaped my attention, the annual report on farm to school. And I'm asking because last session we were at 6%, and that was largely because of beef. And I'm wondering where we are now. If you, and I know they're just putting the final finishes on that data, and maybe I did miss that report. So if you could update us and also talk about your strategy moving forward, because now with the change in leadership at the department, I'm curious as to your approach.
The first answer is I believe that report should be submitted to the legislature. So
Okay.
I'll follow
look
up
for
on
it.
that.
So I just
Yeah.
missed it.
Yeah.
Do you have that number off the top of your head?
It's still low. It's still probably less than 10%.
And strategy?
I would defer to superintendent because both of us have engaged with some of the industry now. We both visited along with others some food hubs so that we can get educated first of all to understand what are the opportunities to partner there, because we're not the department of everything. And we do have some good partners. We have some great partners that we want to explore. And as we've said before, while we want to expand local and while we want to do all the things that the community wants us to do, we also want to be prudent in making sure that it's certified and things of that nature. Having said that, we know that there's other ways to achieve that not all 7,000 farmers are going to be certified. They're just impossible to do that. So there are opportunities that we look forward to working with you to see what we can do. It's a can do. I know that we have some complex areas that are interested in doing a pilot now. And so those are exciting things. But we also have to be compliant, as you know, with our menus and USDA requirements and things of that nature. But yeah, we're open to it, and superintendent is also actively involved.
Thank you, Deputy. I'll first turn it over to Deputy
Oyana Marichan.
Sorry about that. You know what the question. Sorry.
I just wanted to flag that this, in November, DOE did an RFI, request for information, regarding locally sourced produce. So with regard to food hubs, local farmers being able to provide to food hubs, and there was a really good response. I can't remember the numbers right offhand, but there was a good response to that RFI, and we can provide the information about that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I heard about that RFI, and I'm asking because we're being asked to fund the shortfall, and when we ran Aina Pono, we saved hundreds of thousands of dollars just in that short-term pilot. So I'm really hoping that you folks can find the nexus between fiscal responsibility and going more local.
Thank you for that question, Representative. We are definitely committed to doing all we can to be able to meet the 30% by 2030. We realize the importance that has not only on our students about eating local, but also the impact to our economy. So we are taking a very progressive approach and doing all that we can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's the line.
Thank you so much. Okay, Rep. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to talk to you about ways for the DOE to save money, right? We always have so many mounting and increasing costs, but in my district, as you are very familiar from past requests, we have many schools competing for fewer students in the same neighborhood. I have one circular drive, Keolu Drive, and there are 3 elementary schools on it, and one of those has hovered about 100 students for more than a decade, half of those students not being from the district. Another school was over 500 students, now is 200 and something students, and they're competing with each other for students. And probably the quality of the access to resources, specialty teachers like PE, music, art has gone down. Definitely school morale has gone down. So I feel like the quality of the education is decreasing, and the obvious solution is school consolidation. And maybe my district is the only one that has that situation, but I find that hard to imagine that that's true. And so I feel like the DOE, despite my attempts for literally 3 years, to have this situation addressed and to use that land instead of as an expense and for a very old school campus, instead of pouring maintenance money into it, using it as an asset for affordable teacher housing or something like that, or online school combined with affordable teacher housing. But I feel like we're not moving forward, and it's hard in some ways for me to really respect the need for more funds when I feel like money's being wasted by having a campus open that shouldn't be open.
Thank you very much, Representative Martin. The department has started to take a look at those issues that you've raised. We are looking at the process that we need to follow in terms of working together within the department first and identifying school campuses that meet certain criteria. So we definitely will work with you. I know you have shared that with me, that concern in the past, and I definitely will get back to you on where we are with that. I understand your concern, and in moving forward in that direction, and I'll definitely reach out to you on that soon.
Martin, are you finished or are you still going? Okay. Representative Matayoshi.
I just wanted to bring up that for Keolu Elementary, which is one of the ones you were talking about, I had floated an idea before about having a charter school move in there, but there was great opposition from the school principal. So, I mean, I just want to caution us that when we're talking about consolidating schools, that sometimes the pushback comes from the community or even the school itself that doesn't want to really let go. But if we do have extra space, I know there are a number of charter schools who would be interested in school facilities that they don't have to necessarily maintain out of their own school budgets, that are already pretty much turnkey. There are a number of charter schools in my district and in all of our districts, I think, that would love for the opportunity to use some existing DOE facilities if the DOE is considering school consolidation. So just throwing that out there.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. The chair has some questions. We know that there are some pressing issues on your folks' time, so I will try to truncate my inquiries. First, I want to start off with Lahaina. And you spoke briefly about the air monitors, wanting to know who, in fact, is responsible for checking those monitors on a regular basis, and if there's any indications that the air quality over there is bad in West Maui.
So the air quality monitors are available online for the public to see. There's actually quite a lot of monitors. There's been put up, I think, especially because the debris removal in the community is beginning. In the Department of Education, we have a protocol around the monitors. So our administrators at the schools have alerts on their phones if air quality hits a certain level. We also have our Department of Education Environmental Services Unit. They also have developed an application to track when the air quality monitors turn to certain levels. So we do have different individuals who are responsible for tracking changes and then taking action if there are changes in the air quality, noting that sometimes when there are changes, there can be different reasons for a change in air quality. Sometimes the monitors have gone to yellow and we check with the school, and for example, there might have been weed whacking or construction in the area. So the monitors trigger an investigation is too strong a word. They trigger looking for additional information about the situation on the ground in Lahaina.
Okay. So again, then that suggests that these particular monitors are not differentiating between like dust particles and contaminants.
The monitors just tell you if there are particles in the air. It doesn't tell you what kind. So we need to use other information to identify what kind. So far, the air quality has been good in Lahaina. It's almost always green, and occasionally at the school sites at least, when it's become yellow, we have followed up to find out and learned that there's some kind of other activity related to, as I mentioned, construction or
Okay,
such.
so you do have a system in place to deal with that.
Yes, we have a system.
And is there individuals? I mean, you mentioned that there is potential overlap in people monitoring the monitors, but is there designated people so you know for sure that there's constant monitoring happening? Is that being coordinated or is it not?
So it's coordinated in the sense that there's both someone from central office, so from in facilities office, who is monitoring, and then as well as at the school site. So I would say we have some redundancy in the process to make sure that there's tracking, consistent tracking.
Okay, thank you for that. And what about the monitors that are interior? They're inside the school campuses. Is there a similar system in place? Are there individuals monitoring those?
So our focus is on the external monitors in terms of monitoring what's going on in different parts of the schools. So I would say those are the ones that are available publicly, and the internal ones are just, I would say backup, but additional information.
Okay.
But they're not our primary source of information.
Have any of those internal monitors triggered to yellow? Or I don't know if the indicators are the same.
So I'm not as familiar. I would have to check on that. But yes, but our primary, again, is the external monitors.
So we want to make sure there's nothing in the filters. Yeah, that's why I'm asking those questions. Okay. And are you folks working with water supply department to make sure that the potable water is safe and it remains safe?
So
Maui County.
So I can follow up with additional detail, but we did rely on the county's testing of the water initially after the fires. But I would have to check in terms of ongoing communication, but I presume that we would be notified if there was a community issue on the quality of the water.
Right, so there's a DOE representative that sits in on the Maui County weekly meeting. And so whether it's air quality, water quality, we're getting apprised as the county is giving reports.
Thank you for that. And again, I want to thank the Department of Education and Transportation for quickly putting together that evacuation route that was per Maui County Community's request. We're very, very grateful for that. You mentioned that there are some challenges regarding that route right now. There was another route that was to spill over on the bypass from Hakau Place, North Hakau Place Road, or I guess Place. Is there any indications as to when that's going to be ready? Do you have a timeline on that, or you're aware of that project?
Aware, but no timeline.
Okay.
That requires additional negotiation with the county and some private access.
Okay, there's private access issues with that. Okay. Because in essence,
Not insurmountable, but we just need
it's
to work it
against a
out.
wall, basically, and the wall is the physical barrier between that community and the bypass. But you're saying that there's an issue right there.
Yeah.
Okay. And
We just want to make sure, because there are other lands that are associated with some other private landowners. We just need to make sure that whatever we establish, we have access to it. That's all.
okay,
So we will definitely update you on that. That's an alternative route.
I'll follow up on that.
Yep.
Any other questions? I'm going to continue. If there's not, okay, thank you. Okay, you have a question?
Go.
Okay. So in your presentation, you also highlighted the fact that Hawaii as a state, we are making a lot of progress with regards to how effective that we are addressing learning loss. You indicated that through our NAEP scores, our other Strive High scores, and some other metrics. The United States Department of Education did give guidance, along as with other entities, as to the best practices, how to deal with learning loss. To me, these best practices are pretty much aligned with those strategies that you would use to take a look at decreasing achievement gaps over time. And so we also know that the data says that in terms of our students, there is comparable abilities and opportunities for students to be up to the same learning level in terms of outcomes. But yet in the budget, I noticed that what was it? $20.99 million, $21 million that was not appropriated. And so trying to draw some of these connections between the budget items and how it impacts policy and ultimately our learning outcomes. Can you speak a little bit about what will happen if, in fact, some of that money is not allocated or ultimately appropriated by the legislature? And specifically, the line item was $21 million for learning hubs. And so there were some other breakouts, but that was an important piece of funding that wasn't allocated.
Thank you very much for that very important question, Chair. As was shared in the presentation, that our trajectory based on the data that we're seeing is a positive trajectory. Well, we understand and we totally realize that and committed to the fact that we still have work to do, definitely. But the current trajectory is positive, and there's an urgency in it being able to sustain that momentum that our schools have worked so hard to improve in. And so I'll turn it over to Deputy Armstrong to share more about those effective strategies that our schools are implementing.
Right. So schools, you're correct, did implement a variety of strategies to address the amount of time that students spent out of school or were on distance learning statewide. And the schools first prioritized their standards. They knew that every single standard couldn't be addressed, and we do have resources that show priority standards. If we do, these are the absolutely crucial standards for each grade level or each subject area. That was number one. That we can continue to do. Schools also, it's been mentioned, provided robust after school and summer learning. Those do come at a cost. So for our summer schools, just to give you an idea of the participation and why the schools are saying it made such an impact, we did have 5,317 students attending official summer school that allows students to receive either a half or a whole credit during that time. We also had 20,371 students participating in the summer learning hubs. Those do take personnel to operate. We have math camps that were for our grades 1 to 3 that happened during the breaks and in the summer. And that covered about a total of 1,573 students. So these extra activities were highly valued and did draw large participation, but they do require funding. Another strategy was tutoring, whether that be after-school tutoring or carving out that intervention time, which some schools had to resort to during the school day because they were unable, for whatever reason, to have the kids stay after school. Those required, in many instances, additional personnel so that smaller groupings could be formed, and then the students' needs could be targeted based on what the assessment data was telling the schools that showing the schools the gaps that the students had. So these we expanded many opportunities for students. We've always had summer school. We expanded it. The lessons learned were these things do make a difference, and it behooves us to continue reach for resources that will allow these to continue.
So besides that $20.99 million that was not allocated, that was specifically for summer programs, all of those strategies that you mentioned are important. Those are aspects that you see in strong school systems. It's more broadly referred to as strong student supports, as you know. Is there any money allocated specifically for some of the after-school programs in the budget? I did not see any big tickets in there, but maybe I missed it first glance.
Chair, just to clarify, when you're asking about individual programs, specific types of programs that are supporting students with after-school supports.
Broadly or specific, a specific example is like the REACH program. Typically, there's like $500,000 that's allocated in the budget. I did not see that allocation or ultimately appropriation.
There's a request for middle school athletics that's in the budget this year. I believe it's $5 million to provide after-school activities for middle school students.
Okay. And I guess more so I'm speaking of those particular tools, although that is very important as well, that help address both learning loss and to decrease student achievement gaps as it relates to strategies for both after-school, robust tutoring, and summer school programs that help with those issues.
Are you referring to like Uplink or the GEAR programs?
Are there any budgetary items that address any of those issues?
The one budget is what Deputy Chun mentioned, the middle school athletics. That's the one request that's in the budget here.
Okay. So you're not sure?
Chair, if I may also, on slide 6, we refer to the high leverage initiatives to implement our new strategic plan. Those 8 areas are what we've identified as high leverage initiatives for the department. Looking at those 8, we've definitely prioritized implementing these 8 areas with our schools, which would be able to meet multiple areas within our strategic plan. And so, but it is a comprehensive approach. And so I think part of what you're asking about related to whether it be middle school, mathematics, innovation, those things definitely could be taken up within a summer school program as schools are able to identify, based on their data, what areas of support they would want to focus on.
Another example is per the ESSER funds, there was a pot of money allocated for after-school programs. I can't recall the amount, but I don't know if that particular funding source is going to be replaced with state funds, or if there was to ask for that.
We don't have a specific request specifically for that line item, although schools can implement different strategies based on their school needs using their weighted student formula, and also other kinds of supplemental funds like federal funds.
But Chair, definitely though, we can work together with you to that if we need to identify additional areas that, based on what you're seeing nationally too, that are high leverage. We definitely work together with you to see what other areas that we might be able to support schools with in supporting students.
It's because it sounds like you folks have been very successful, and we don't want those gains to dissipate because we have to decrease the level of support. And so just looking at the entirety of the apparatus, how do we support students? You do that in different ways, but some of these larger strategies have proven to be effective, and so we don't want to stop doing that.
Yes, most definitely. And we thank you very much for your support on that.
Okay. Okay, I have more questions, but I'm going to go to Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much, Deputy Armstrong, for the analysis and data on the summer schools. Is this something that we have also been doing for after-school programs in terms of participation, and then looking at which schools, what type of programming is needed for some schools?
Yes, I think the difference in this situation is that summer school, typically we charge the students. I think it's $90 for a half credit, or $95 a half credit, $100. With the ESSER funding, we were able to offer this for free, and it truly made a difference. We were also, sometimes transportation is an issue for students in some areas, and because schools were allowed to purchase smaller buses, it didn't alleviate all of the transportation issues in keeping students after school or during the summer, but it did help to alleviate some. So I also think that the recognition that we had a lot to make up for our students really caused all of us and all of the schools to make a push for participation and to ensure that they did offer a robust array of opportunities for the students. And once we did that, we recognized this is something that we would like to continue long term because of the impacts that it does have.
Great. And then is the current budget request incorporating assumptions on increase in participation rates, or is this just to maintain what had been offered in the past year?
We're always looking to increase participation rates. And I think as things begin to normalize and we continue to improve on and expand our opportunities, we will be able to maintain that attraction for students to participate in this.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question for Deputy Odaguro on project completion. So is the lump sum on project completion, because what I'm hearing is our traditional systems and how we've appropriated and our timelines for, appropriation, planning, design, and then construction. By the time we get to construction, it's too late and there's not, not enough time. So what I'm hearing is the traditional process is not working and has not been working. And we'd really like to move towards this new system of lump sum as a tool to react quickly, as you had mentioned. And so can you give me an example of us being able to utilize this new system of using lump sum funds to be able to expedite, a project? And kind of walk me through that example of what are the different ways that we were more efficient in terms of construction, efficiency.
Good question. So the process did work, and it has worked for years. What has changed is the industry and some of our county partners, and it's not pointing the finger at the county, but they have challenges just like we all do. So the legislative time frame to get a job done to encumber funds is 2 years or 3 years, depending on which year you're getting it, right? As we looked at our CIP projects over the past year, starting in March of last year, we wanted to look at each line item and determine why is this project not moving. And so we were able to uncover the trend that for a number of reasons. Some of it is in pre-design. So the first place that we would love to reintroduce something is having a pre-designed lump sum fund. And that means when we go to a design, before they even come to you, even for an appropriation, we should be able to get to our principals and have a better concept of what it is we want in a classroom or a building. So that we don't see it, how it's working now, honestly, most times we get into a line item that's in a budget, and it's 3 sentences long, and that's the scope. And so from that point, then we have to initiate this pre-design work, engage with someone to do that. But if we can be a little more mindful up front to work with our principals and kind of scope things out. A good example is I just got a call from a colleague, one of your colleagues, they want to fence the school. That's it. How much? Well, what specifically does that mean? Where you want the fence to go? Does it go to a parking lot or not? How high is it? What kind of fencing? I mean, do I need permitting if I'm going to an area that doesn't necessarily fence today? I mean, there's just a lot of other questions that if we didn't ask up front, we may tell you a number that may be not 100%. And so that's where scope design or a better definition of scope is something we need to do a better job in. That's what I recommend. So that way, when our principals talk to you, they're much more armed and much more confident in the number that's provided. And so that, I wouldn't say it's 100% wrong, but it's guesswork. And the guesswork has caught us because during the pandemic, as you know, the costs for supplies went up at least 30%, if not more. Sometimes in some cases, supply chains was 40%. Nobody's fault, but the appropriation didn't go up 40%. So the blessing of having this project completion funding was simply that, to compensate for the time delays, cost overruns. Some of it would be poor project management, scope increase. That's always a discipline that we have to do. Having standards is definitely something we need to reestablish here. So a classroom is a classroom, just like we did the pre-K classrooms. It's replicated 11 times, the same thing. We need that same discipline when we're doing other things. A gym is a gym, depending on the topography of the land, but it should be a gym. And we should have 3 versions or 4 versions, whatever it is, and pick one. Rather than go to the architect and say, give me a gym. And we get creative with that. Schools, same thing. So, having standardized disciplines for our department so that we can be prudent in how we want to expand and build should be a discipline that we all uphold. Everybody wants a pretty school. There's no question about that. Everyone wants architectural marvels and making it wow, and we should have some of that. But we have to, as a state, be disciplined to make sure that we don't overbuild. And we see that across the state, not just in DOE, where I came from before, we had the same issues. So it's just a different discipline to have building standards and stick to it. But it's a long process that I think Superintendent can comment.
Superintendent?
Thank you, Deputy. As Vice Chair, as Deputy Tagore has shared, definitely that those are issues that we need to address. But I just also want to remind everyone that we be mindful of we understand that there are also other issues related to facilities that has been historical, and it is an overall process that we were looking at, one part is definitely what David had shared, part of a bigger process though. Yeah, and so that's what, together with what I had shared earlier about the overall real estate optimization, is why we're also taking a look at one component of how we need to address the overall process. There is a bigger picture to it, and so that's what we look forward to engaging with you in, because definitely we're going to need to have some changes working together with the legislature moving forward.
Right. And I can certainly appreciate it. What I'm hearing is we're really the department is trying to be able to get to a level of certainty, which means when we make these requests, it's based on an informed decision on the true cost that it would take. Is the plan for the pre-design then going to be, Department of Education employees, or are you hoping to structure that we would have like consultants just on hand to work with us on this kind of assessment process?
That's part of the discussion that's ongoing right now internally within the department.
Okay.
And so we definitely look forward to connecting back with the committee and sharing our updates as we move forward.
I would just add that one thing that is clear, we need to do a better job communicating with each other. There's no question about that. There has to be more transparency with the legislature and providing you with the updates. You may not want to get involved in every single nitty gritty, but absolutely, if there's, as we're going through the project, if we find that the timeframes are getting tight, you should know about it. If we find that the cost estimates the estimates are higher than was appropriated later on, you should know about it. So these are things that we can continue to refine, as Superintendent said, in communication.
No, thank you. I mean, we all know that, as leadership, you all want, as our educators, what's best for our kids. And I mean, it does take a lot of challenges, especially with, new leadership, but I certainly appreciate, your willingness to revisit a lot of, the challenges and the bottlenecks, investment, I think, in strong data and systems and program management systems. And we look forward to how, all of this is going to be communicated back to us, because we never want to get to that level where we're, taken by surprise when a big issue comes to us, and then it's going to be too late for us to be able to advocate for the department or for our individual school districts. And you're right, failure to communicate is, failure to our constituents and to the public. So thank you for sharing that. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So I think we actually do have more time. There's this situation is fluent, so I will continue with some questioning. And so with regards to your overall real estate optimization plan, I know that you folks are just at the beginning of that. There are some successful tools and strategies that are proven to work to make that process better. You reference the $352 million that was allocated for the job order contracting system. That is one example within the context of what you folks do already. Is there any thought to expanding that process or the scope of that tool more so?
Yes, the answer to that question is simple. Yes, we want to replicate what is successful. We want to absolutely leverage what we currently have within the laws of procurement. We do have some things that we have to follow in procurement, and to be fair, but at the same time, we know that we can do a better job for those projects that are the same. The one-offs, the larger school builds, that's not going to work through job order contracting. Obviously, that's an RFP. But even in design bid build, where you design everything up front, or you do a design build which takes more for the industry to come back with their ideas of what best would fit an appropriation. So yeah, there's a lot of different tools out there. We just have to be more mindful of when we use certain procurement types. A low bid is okay. It is for certain types of projects. But a low bid is not good for something that's very meticulous or detailed, obviously. So it's just being more mindful of when we use the right procurement tool, and we can be successful.
Regarding procurement tools and some other strategies, OFO, the Office of Facilities and Operations, I know that you folks have been having discussions with the University of Hawaii. Hopefully you're having discussions with the School Facility Authority, which is a newly formed entity, and looking at strategies around economies of scale. I mean, instead of having individual projects, are we looking at, like, for example, if there are plumbing issues in 5 or 6 schools, can we contract that out one time to save on costs and money, as opposed to doing it how we do it right now? I mean, is that something that you're looking at? Another good example is like roofing is something clearly we're gonna have to address. You know, if we don't address like plumbing and roofing, those issues compound. And so how are we attacking, you know, those challenges? I think about some of the things that are the School Facilities Authority is doing right now around bundling like furniture, right? They're bundling furniture, and that operationalization is actually leading to a reduced cost of actually establishing those pre-kindergarten classrooms. We were told at the beginning, you know, those pre-K classrooms were going to cost about $1 million a piece. They're doing it for about, I think, $400 million. So that's a significant reduction in costs. Are you folks going to be looking at some of those types of strategies?
Thank you very much for the question, Chair. Yes, we have been in communication and contact with the University of Hawaii, and learning from them what their successes are, and how we can then take some of what they're doing, and how we might be able to implement within the department and to learn from those best practices. Relating to the SFA's partnership with Ready Keiki, the department did move forward with our JOC process and job order contracting in helping to support that effort.
Is that DOE led, or is that SFA led with regards to the pre-K classrooms? I know those classrooms, obviously they're at DOE campuses, but who is leading that?
Right. So originally, the School Facilities Authority did not have procurement abilities, and so we leveraged the DOE's current preferred small contractors procurement and/or job order contracting to leverage what we already had in place. And so the combination of both allowed us to transfer funds from SFA to allow that to happen. That is since SFA has now agreed to move forward with them on their own accord.
That's interesting. So that's like a hybrid system, which is good. You guys are working together on that. Talking to contractors just to try to get a better idea as to how we can bring down costs. This is an entirely different aspect, right? You folks are charged with learning and student outcomes, but this is actually procurement, permitting, and construction. But also, not only in places like California, but here in Hawaii, we've had some great successes with design and build concept. And I think about like some of the projects on this island, the Kapolei side. I think about some of the projects like in South Maui, in which they use design build. An example of that is that the developer has access to the parcel defined as, if it's DOE land, they might lease it out to the developer to cut down on approval processes amongst entities or authorities that have access or rights to that land. This is temporary, but again, that's one process that helps expedite, that's one tool, I should say, that helps expedite the program, the process. And also within that, what you do or what they do or what they have done in the past is you negotiate a price point with the developer and the department. You say, we're going to build a school for you at this cost. And then that way the onus is on the developer to make sure they develop that school at like $120 million so that you don't have to worry about cost overruns, right, for the department. Is that something that you folks are looking into?
Yes, that is exactly what we need to get a discipline on. Design build is exactly that. We put it out, we put an RFQ out or an RFI to see who are interested bidders. We narrow the field, and then from that narrow field, then we issue an RFP and say that this is what we need. And for you tell us what you're going to build for this amount. Yeah.
Okay, and even like, just to get a little bit more technical, because I know that she's an expert. She has a real estate background, a development background. The orientation of how we build our schools, right? Having classrooms back to back as opposed to the traditional build that we do, that will save like 40% in cost because you're reducing the exterior space by that much. That brings the price per square foot down from about $1,400 per square foot, which it is right now in Maui, to about $900 per square foot. All of those tools can save on costs. So hopefully you folks are looking and can leverage some of those tools.
I'd like the assistant superintendent to speak on that, but I'll give you a good example. The temporary school in Pulelehua in West Maui, it's individual classrooms, so it consumes a lot of space. It's a very inefficient way to get classrooms there because they're not connected, versus having a design that would provide what you just said. So yeah, you're right. We can be more efficient, but I don't know if assistant superintendent with all your years of experience in construction.
I really have no credentials. I just talk a lot. But anyway, design build is good. I think we have to, I'm just getting started in the job here. We have to control our designers on what they design. We don't need a Taj Mahal that we can't maintain and stuff. So it has to be more standardized. And don't ask me what standardized is. I gotta look, but I've been at Central Intermediate, my husband and I, and McKinley. So, and those are old, archaic, but beautiful schools. But we need something more modern, more energy efficient. So we have to come together with the designers, the architects and engineers, and kind of start and get maybe some kind of mold or sample. You know, we can deviate a little, but I think we have to stick more towards a structure. Yeah.
I appreciate that. What I don't want to happen though, and I know there's not agreement, when you go to the continent and you see those public schools, they are beautiful. And we have some challenges here that makes it more cost prohibitive for us to go above and beyond, but still our schools should still look nice. I think that's also important. And so trying to find the balance between saving costs, looking at some of these strategies, and making sure that we are producing products that we can be proud of, I think is important as well.
I would say that the material that is being used now in some of the newer buildings is absolutely standardized. So tile, as you saw in the Waipahu Learning Center, is the kind, if Farrington High School has that for their athletic complex. That is a standard look. It's classy, and it's going to help us maintain that much cheaper, less inexpensive over the long haul because it's tile, but beautiful tile. Those are the kind of things I think Audrey is talking about.
Okay.
I didn't mean a wood box,
Yeah.
but just more controlled. I call it a Taj Mahal, but
Sure.
that's workable. And I think some of the processes we have to tighten up a little more and keep maybe a watchful eye on the contractor and the architect engineer and the consultants that we hire.
I think that's important. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Chair, if I may also, Deputy Superintendent Armstrong was actually in Shimano in the design build for Ho'okele Elementary.
Okay,
So I don't know if you want her to share
sure.
a little bit about her process.
So I just wanted to echo the sentiments on the positive nature of a design build. I do know one drawback was that we needed the money up front, like that was one of the issues. But the I've had the opportunity to open or be part of the building of a new school and also the addition of buildings to existing schools. And with the design build process, we opened a new school faster than we could, adding through the the design bid build process, just adding a building to an existing school. And the beauty of the design build is that the onus for timelines, quality, and meeting the scope of the work falls on the contracted provider. And so we did not have to go through change orders, delay in timelines, et cetera, because during the design build process, when those things had to happen, when the project didn't meet scope, it was on the contractor to make those changes and to take over those costs. Our cost was fixed. So from just having one experience with it, it is a very efficient, and in this one case, it was a very effective way to go.
Thank you. Fixed cost. Okay, perfect. Any other questions, members? Okay, seeing none, we appreciate that the Department of Education came out to share with us some of your vision, some of the challenges facing our budget. Hopefully, we will all continue to work together to make sure that we move forward for our state and for our keiki. So thank you. Adjourn.